Princess go by. She sat on her mother's shoulders to watch the princess go by as a bride. And today you came to say goodbye to Princess Diana. Do you feel in some way a special attachment to her, Jennifer, because you were here as a little girl watching her go by as a beautiful bride?
Yeah, she's very beautiful, and I just feel like I had to be here just to show her how much loved she was and how she's in everybody's heart, and just felt special to be here.
How did the service affect you?
Very touching. It was very well done, and she got the most respect from people, and it was lovely.
Tony Blair had said right after Diana had died on Saturday that the people of Britain really needed a big funeral, an opportunity that they, people like you, could come here and line the streets and say your goodbyes. Do you feel that the people of Britain got that today?
Yeah, definitely. It was lovely. We was totally included in the whole lot of it, with speakers telling us what was going on with the church. It was lovely. The whole lot was lovely.
And you have flowers in your hands. Where are you going now, Jennifer?
I'm going to take them to somewhere where a load of flowers are and put them together so they'll be collected and given to her sons, the cards anyway.
Thank you, Jennifer DeMullen.
Thanks.
Dan?
Everyone has remarked that a highlight, if not the highlight of the service back here at Westminster Abbey was Elton John, what he sang and how he sang it. We want to replay for you now Elton John and his tribute to the Queen of Hearts, the Princess of the People.
Goodbye, England's rose. May you ever grow in our hearts. You were the grace that placed yourselves where lives were torn apart. You called out to our country, and you whispered to those in pain. Now you belong to heaven, and the stars spell out your name. And it seems to me you lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will. Loneliness we've lost, those empty days without your smile. This torch we'll always carry for our nation's golden child. Even though we try, the truth brings us to tears. All our words cannot express the joy you brought us through the years. And it seems to me you've lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. Your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will. Goodbye, England's rose. May you ever grow in our hearts. You were the grace that placed yourselves where lives were torn apart. Goodbye, English road, from a country lost without your soul, who missed the wings of your compassion more than you will ever know. And it seems to me you've lived your life like a candle in the wind, never fading with the sunset when the rain set in. And your footsteps will always fall here along England's greenest hills. Your candles burned out long before your legend ever will.
Candle in the Wind, Elton John. Candle in the Wind was a favorite of Princess Diana since she was a schoolgirl. It was written originally for Marilyn Monroe, who coincidentally also died at age 36. David Starkey and Ingrid Seward, let me read to you a quotation from the Public Prince this week. Quote, Brian Hunt, Daily Telegraph music critic, who said the inclusion of pop music is fully justifiable to have pop music in a ceremony such as this. But, he wrote, the use of a song originally dedicated to Marilyn Monroe suggests a desire to portray the princess as an icon of contemporary culture. Arguably, this funeral is neither the time nor the place, unquote. Your reaction to that, Ingrid?
I think that's very pompous and unnecessary. I think it was great to have Elton John singing here. He's a great friend of all the royal family. The Queen Mother, I think, was his original fan. He's played at all their parties. He's danced with the Queen. And I think it was very fitting that he should, doesn't matter who he originally wrote the song, well, Bernie Taupin wrote the song, doesn't matter who it was written for. And I'm afraid Diana is an icon. There's no getting away from it. There's nothing ever like her. So I think it's very pompous to say she shouldn't be or to criticize it. I think it's great, let's go with it.
David?
Diana was an icon. We wouldn't be grieving like this. Let me immediately confess to you, Dan, I am a non-believer. What we're seeing now is a kind of invention of a religious cult. I didn't believe in Diana, I don't believe in Diana, and I won't believe in Diana. That doesn't mean that I can't see what she was and what she did. And she quite genuinely fused together being royal, being Marilyn Monroe, a little touch of the Madonnas. Madonna actually advised her on how to cope with publicity. Madonna has actually spoken very movingly on Diana's fate. And if we try, and as the Daily Telegraph would love to do, lift Diana out of the world of celebrity and put her firmly back on a royal pedestal and put the coronet on her head that was carefully removed when she was stripped of the title Royal Highness, we completely misunderstand her. These people have turned out in their thousands, tens, hundreds, millions today because she was more than royal, because she was an icon, because she was a celebrity doing good, but quite a lot of celebrities do good. And this attempt at separating the worlds out, well, I think anybody who writes for a rather dull conservative newspaper like the Daily Telegraph would do that.
There goes your job at the Daily Telegraph.
I don't have one.
Let's go down on the street again. CBS News correspondent Vicky Mabry. Vicky?
One doesn't, I think I said before it should be, not that I had anything to do with it, but I said it should be a service that reflected her personality.
I'm here with Lord Peter Palumbo, who is the chairman of the Serpentine Gallery, which is a very famous, very well-known, very well-respected art gallery here in London. More importantly, he was a very, very close friend of Princess Diana's, knew her before the wedding, attended the wedding, and have kept in touch with her through all these years. Was the service one that she would have approved of?
I think very much so. I think it reflected her personality. We had some wonderfully traditional English hymns and anthems when we had Elton John, who was marvelous. I can't tell you how good he was. I think it was a magnificent blend of the old and the new, tradition and the contemporary, and one that she would have very much liked and appreciated.
Your reaction to her brother's eulogy?
I thought it was one of the most, in fact, certainly the most moving tribute that I've ever heard in a church. I was, last time I was at Westminster Abbey was for the funeral service of Lord Olivier, the actor. And there, at the very end of the service, there was the great speech that he made before Agincourt as Henry V. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house as a result. But today was even better. It was a magnificent
speech. He spoke so much about her personally, but he also was not hypocritical in that a lot of people have said he disinvited the tabloids, which showed that he was not being hypocritical. He didn't want them there, and he spoke out about that.
Yes, he didn't. He said things that needed to be said, and he didn't flinch from saying them, but he said them in a very, very beautiful way.
He also at one point spoke about Diana's laughter that doubled you over. Did it double those hearing it over, or did it double her over?
Both. It doubled her over and it doubled everybody else over. She had a wonderful sense of humor, a wonderful sense of fun, sometimes mischievous, but always engaging. And it's one of the things I shall most miss about her, was this marvelous, quick sense of humor, repartee, ability to mimic. She was marvelous.
Was she always like that? You've known her from the time she was very young, the shy children's teacher. Was she quick-witted?
Yes, always a wonderful communicator. And I mean, you're either a communicator or you're not. You've got some wonderful communicators in your country, and she was certainly a magnificent communicator for us.
You were with her the night that she wore the famous black dress with the floaty bit on it, the night that Charles gave the interview. Could you tell that she was hurt, or what was her response?
Not at all, no. She was in tremendous form, dazzling form. I've never seen her in better form, and I'm sure that underneath it all, she was probably feeling different emotions, but not once did she show them.
You said she was a fabulous mimic. Who did she mimic?
Well, she mimicked, used to mimic people she thought were pompous, or public figures whom she thought were hypocritical. She was a very natural person. She didn't like pomposity or side. She liked people to be natural, and if they weren't, she was wonderfully good at mimicking.
Okay. Lord Peter Palumbo, thank you very much for joining us. Dan?
Vicki Mabry on the street just below us here. I want to remind you that on this CBS station, a little later in the morning, we will be replaying in its entirety the funeral service for Princess Diana. You're watching CBS News live coverage of the farewell to a princess. Well, since the minute of silence ended just after the funeral service, the bells of Westminster have been pealing back there, and pealing and pealing. So beautiful, but also so loud that we can hardly hear anything else some of the time. It's a powerful kind of music, almost joyful, and we're probably foolish to compete with it, so for at least a few moments we aren't going to. Let's go to Tom Fenton at Buckingham Palace. Tom?
Dan, I'm here with Andrew Neil, a Scot and editor-in-chief of the Scotsman newspaper and other titles, but notwithstanding that, one of the leading commentators on British current affairs. Andrew, how do you think the late princess will be viewed by history?
Popular culture will turn her into a mix of President Kennedy and Marilyn Monroe and others of the good who died young. But I think her real significance will be that she changed the way British people thought about monarchy and the House of Windsor. And even in her death, she changed the way we thought it. And the monarchy will never be the same again after this.
I mean, how? How has she changed it?
She changed it in the sense she was the only truly modern royal. All the other royals, even of her generation, belonged to a previous age. She combined glamour and responsibility, and indeed she returned the monarchy to this concept which they were in danger of losing, that with monarchy and all its privileges comes great responsibility. A lot of the people over in that house there had begun to forget about that. She reminded us of that's what it wants to be. And in a country like Britain, democratic, meritocratic, and modern, she encapsulated what a monarchy, royalty should be like if it's to survive in the 21st century. If they don't learn, they won't be there.
I wonder what kind of a queen she would have made.
Oh, I think she would have made a wonderful queen, because she would have represented this country at its best. You know, that's what you want of a leader of a nation. In time of war, if it's Roosevelt or Churchill or whatever, you need someone like that. But to have someone who looked for, you see, she would have lived, most of her life would have been lived in the 21st century if she had survived. She was a person of her times. You look around today, what you saw here and at Kensington Palaces, first of all, you saw people of her generation and younger. She spoke to them in a way that even at Winston Churchill's funeral, they didn't do that. And you saw here the way we would like Britain to be. Black, brown, white, poor people, all of ethnic countries. At a time, you know, when there's debates about whether Scotland should have its own parliament, she even brought the United Kingdom together again. And she set a yardstick for the way we would like to be. And from now on, how we will judge ourselves as to whether we're doing well or not.
That's a tremendous impact, even in death.
It's huge, bigger than I mean, if you had asked me 2 weeks ago, if Diana dies, what would you be saying? I would not say that. We have lived through the most amazing week in my life in this country.
Yeah, and in mine too. I've never seen anything like that in the 18 years I've been here.
I think, you know, the British learn something about themselves. You know, we've said the press has got to learn some lessons, the monarchy's got to learn some lessons. We learned ourselves that we're actually a rather different people than the ones in these old grey movie-tone newsies, or even in the way, can I say, that sometimes America portrays us as well. We're actually more modern, more down-to-earth, more openly emotional than we ever thought. We'll be changed by this as well.
Right, I haven't seen a bowler hat in years.
Exactly.
Dan?
Thank you, Tom Fenton. There can be no doubt that the most talked about eulogy at the ceremony completed a short time ago here at Westminster Abbey came from Charles, the Earl Spencer, Princess Diana's brother. It had eloquence. That eloquence was matched by other rare sounds at any funeral. One, anger, deep-seated anger, even outrage, and also applause from those assembled. For those of you who heard it, who saw it, you may want to see and hear it again. For those of you who didn't, we want to share it with you now.
I stand before you today, the representative of a family in grief, in a country in mourning, before a world in shock. We are all united, not only in our desire to pay our respects to Diana, but rather in our need to do so. For such was her extraordinary appeal that the tens of millions of people taking part in this service all over the world, via television and radio, who never actually met her, feel that they too lost someone close to them in the early hours of Sunday morning. It is a more remarkable tribute to Diana than I can ever hope to offer her today. Diana was the very essence of compassion, of duty, of style, of beauty. All over the world, she was a symbol of selfless humanity, a standard bearer for the rights of the truly downtrodden, a very British girl who transcended nationality, someone with a natural nobility who was classless, and who proved in the last year that she needed no royal title to continue to generate her particular brand of magic. Today is our chance to say thank you for the way you brightened our lives, even though God granted you but half a life. We will all feel cheated, always, that you were taken from us so young, and yet we must learn to be grateful that you came along at all. Only now you are gone do we truly appreciate what we are now without, and we want you to know that life without you is very, very difficult. We have all despaired at our loss over the past week, and only the strength of the message you gave us through your years of giving has afforded us the strength to move forward. There is a temptation to rush to canonize your memory. There is no need to do so. You stand tall enough as a human being of unique qualities, not to need to be seen as a saint. Indeed, to sanctify your memory would be to miss out on the very core of your being, your wonderfully mischievous sense of humor with a laugh that bent you double, your joy for life transmitted wherever you took your smile, and the sparkle in those unforgettable eyes, your boundless energy which you could barely contain. But your greatest gift was your intuition, and it was a gift you used wisely. This is what underpinned all your other wonderful attributes. And if we look to analyze what it was about you that had such a wide appeal, we find it in your instinctive feel for what was really important in all our lives. Without your God-given sensitivity, we would be immersed in greater ignorance at the anguish of AIDS and HIV sufferers, the plight of the homeless, the isolation of lepers, the random destruction of landmines. Diana explained to me once that it was her innermost feelings of suffering that made it possible for her to connect with her constituency of the rejected. And here we come to another truth about her. For all the status, the glamour, the applause, Diana remained throughout a very insecure person at heart, almost childlike in her desire to do good for others so she could release herself from deep feelings of unworthiness, of which her eating disorders were merely a symptom. The world sensed this part of her character and cherished her for her vulnerability, whilst admiring her for her honesty. The last time I saw Diana was on July the 1st, her birthday, in London, when typically she was not taking time to celebrate her special day with friends, but was guest of honor at a fundraising charity evening. She sparkled, of course, but I would rather cherish the days I spent with her in March, when she came to visit me and my children in our home in South Africa. I am proud of the fact that, apart from when she was on public display meeting President Mandela, we managed to contrive to stop the ever-present paparazzi from getting a single picture of her. That meant a lot to her. These were days I will always treasure. It was as if we had been transported back to our childhood, when we spent such an enormous amount of time together, the two youngest in the family. Fundamentally, she hadn't changed at all from the big sister who mothered me as a baby, fought with me at school, and endured those long train journeys between our parents' homes with me at weekends. It is a tribute to her level-headedness and strength that despite the most bizarre life imaginable after her childhood, she remained intact, true to herself. There is no doubt that she was looking for a new direction in her life at this time. She talked endlessly of getting away from England, mainly because of the treatment that she received at the hands of the newspapers. I don't think she ever understood why her genuinely good intentions were sneered at by the media, why there appeared to be a permanent quest on their behalf to bring her down. It is baffling. My own and only explanation is that genuine goodness is threatening to those at the opposite end of the moral spectrum. It is a point to remember that of all the ironies about Diana, perhaps the greatest was this. A girl given the name of the ancient goddess of hunting was, in the end, the most hunted person of the modern age. She would want us today to pledge ourselves to protecting her beloved boys, William and Harry, from a similar fate. And I do this here, Diana, on your behalf. We will not allow them to suffer the anguish that used regularly to drive you to tearful despair. And beyond that, on behalf of your mother and sisters, I pledge that we, your blood family, will do all we can to continue the imaginative and loving way in which you were steering these two exceptional young men, so that their souls are not simply immersed by duty and tradition, but can sing openly as you planned. We fully respect the heritage into which they have both been born, and will always respect and encourage them in their royal role. But we, like you, recognize the need for them to experience as many different aspects of life as possible, to arm them spiritually and emotionally for the years ahead. I know you would have expected nothing less from us. William and Harry, we all care desperately for you today. We're all chewed up with sadness at the loss of a woman who wasn't even our mother. How great your suffering is, we cannot even imagine. I would like to end by thanking God for the small mercies he's shown us at this dreadful time, for taking Diana at her most beautiful and radiant, and when she had joy in her private life. Above all, we give thanks for the life of a woman I'm so proud to be able to call my sister the unique, the complex, the extraordinary and irreplaceable Diana, whose beauty, both internal and external, will never be extinguished from our minds.
Princess Diana's brother, with the most talked about part of the service that took place this morning at Westminster Abbey, has turned now to Ingrid Seward. He spoke in that, saying that with Prince William and Prince Harry, Prince William, of course, being in direct line to the throne, that he and others in the family would protect him. Is that possible? You edit Monarchy magazine. People magazine has already run quite a few pictures of him. He's a very photogenic young man, Prince William is. He is in direct line of the throne. Is it possible in this age to protect someone such as Prince William?
I think if the people want to protect him and the editors of newspapers reflect the people's feelings, we will stand back. He hasn't had a bad time at school. He's been quite left alone. He goes to school at Eton College, just near Windsor Castle. And on the whole, I know Prince Charles told me this, that he quite respects the way they've kept away from William. Harry's had an equally good time at school. It was really, sadly, tragically, when they were with their mother, they had such the bad time. Prince Charles took them on holiday in Kenya this year, and there's not one photograph. It was really when their mother was here and in London with them, they had the bad time. Or, of course, as we know, in the south of France, or wherever she was. And she knew that, and she was powerless to do anything about it. But I think we're never going to see the likes of that again, and I think they will, just by virtue of the fact that they are no longer with their mother, be more protected.
David Starkey, let me pick up on, again, what he said about the press, and he's called the paparazzi by name. When I was in France briefly this last week talking to one of the photographers who was there taking pictures of Princess Diana and took a crash, he said, look, I'm not paparazzi, I'm the press. And then he said to me, he said, if you want to see some really bad paparazzi, go back to Great Britain. And he said, you know, the, quote, press lords in Britain are among the world's worst, unquote. Is that a widely shared opinion here?
I think what is true, it doesn't matter where the photographs were taken or by whom they were taken, those photographers wouldn't have risked life and limb